right, so we are live with one of my good homies. We got Ricardo Zeevaert. Zeevaert.
You got it, man.
Yeah, almost. So Ricardo is sort of a legend in Boulder at this point because he works at one of the community hubs. He actually founded one of the community hubs, which is called Ember Ice. It's a sauna cold plunge location just right in West Boulder here. And it's turned into sort of, again, the social hub. It's like Roman bathhouse vibes where you just meet all these crazy people, like so many people in the podcast. Just met them at the sauna. And Ricardo is also a long-term astrologer. How long have you been doing astrology for?
We're doing astrology 18 years, man, professionally for the last 8.
Yeah. And so we're going to dive deeply into that. So astrology and its kind of correlation to Buddhism and spirituality in general. And also Ricardo is a absolute gangster on the drums.
Thanks, Doc.
It's true, bro. You slaughtered that.
You've seen
shit.
Nothing yet, right?
That's what I'm saying, man. We've had a few just sessions together where we've been able to make some really solid music with some of our friends. And once life slows down a little bit, I think we definitely got to keep doing that.
100%, bro. Please got it. Yeah.
I remember when we went to the mountains that one time and we were just bumping tunes and we were just riffing on like different sounds and like different vibes. And like, bro, like it's a matter of time until we link and we make some real bangers, bro.
I felt that, man. No, I feel that. And yeah, just the corresponding with music tastes and aesthetics and styles and stuff you got going on, man. So,
exactly. So stay tuned for those sick collabs. But Ricky, I want you to just maybe start with just giving people a little taste of who you are, maybe a little bit of your background, what led you to astrology, and then maybe what led you to Ember Ice.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for the question. So truth be told, I'm a first generation American, and there's a lot of question marks that come up for life for me, basically. And somewhere around 13, 14, I wanted to really know, like, well, what's the truth, you know? And I was raised Catholic in a way from my father's side of Mexico. And it really comes from an earlier part of me, maybe even earlier, of just like, you know, what is the real arithmetic of all things? And I truly think that's something you and me can blast off in that I'm pretty excited to get into. Yeah. So, you know, obviously we have all these world religions in this dogmatic form, but I always found like, well, God's got to be written in nature. And so I always find that, like, if God's not written in nature, how much is this situation of astrology, like, you know, how much credence does it really have? And my mom she might have had a book or two on the bookshelf or something, and it reads like, oh, I'm a Sag, my brother's a Leo, yada, yada. But how much relevance is this is something I was experimenting with. And so I'll just say this is like, I'm a very spiritually attuned person, and things really got kind of hot and heavy and rocking around 2009 when I was like a sophomore, but things didn't really get professional for me till 2014, where I was actually looking at a full chart. And then I was actually seeing my life roll out like a TV show. And the more you give attention to that, man, it really cuts through this area where astrology hasn't been acknowledged as a true science, you know, in all the scientific studies. Yet though we have these psychologists and some people like Carl Jung and some others that actually went down some rabbit holes and find a lot of empirical evidence. And so my biggest thing is I think we're now in a chapter that you might be able to see, you know, have your own experience, because I'm not here to push on any other dogma, as it's allowed me to feel the umbrella of all these other religions. And so just something I think you and me can dice up, chop up heavy.
And we will. Yeah. So astrology. And like, I love how you put it, where when you're looking for truth, being, you know, in a Catholic culture, Catholic upbringing, looking for truth and be like, maybe this isn't quite it. And I like what you said about finding God in the natural world. And it's like, bro, if you can't find God in the forest and the mountains and the ocean, bro, where are you going to find him?
Exactly.
Like, and also, can you find God in the stars? And for me, when I really thought about astrology, because like, you know, 5-10 years ago, I was just like, like it's kind of interesting, but I don't really know. It could just be some woo-woo stuff. But the more you start to explore it, the more you're like, this is across cultures globally, like tracking the stars, like Mayan culture, like Hindu culture, Chinese culture, all over the place. And they're like, oh, so maybe there's something in this. And when I just think about it, I'm like, so when you think about what's going on right now, we are on a rock floating through the void. And at the same time, we recognize the impact that massive celestial objects have on us, like planets, black holes, the moon. We feel its gravitational force. The moon causes the tides. So if the moon is pushing on the earth actively, it's pushing on us. You know what I mean? And so are every other planet. So if we're floating through the void, almost like what else would impact us? What else would be the gears in the cosmos causing this place to spin? So from that lens, I'm like, duh, of course the planets are impacting us. And of course that's actually part of this. I like the notion of the divine play, the Leela in Hinduism, where this is a play of divinity, where we're walking through this theater. And what I've found with astrology that is so fucking cool is like, it seems like a lot of our path has been laid out for us already. And we're just experiencing this theater, different vistas, different scenes of life, different seasons. And actually just so to be honest, my main exposure to astrology has been through this app called The Pattern.
Sure.
Which is like really accessible. It predicted the beginning, the issues with and the ending of my last relationship to like a 2-week period. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? It's predicted certain things going on in my life to a T. And I'm like, wait, I've had this app for like, a few years, and I look at it sometimes and I'm like exploring. I'm like, wait, this all seems like it's actually predetermined almost. And you can see in this app, like sort of what's going to be affecting you in your life, like a year and a half from now. And I remember I've had this app for a minute. So I would go to that and I'd be like, oh, that would be interesting. Like, again, you'll meet somebody who's changed your life forever, a really deep connection. And that was when I met my last girlfriend in that like month window. And I'm like, this is weird.
Right.
So it gives me this impression that maybe it's all predetermined in a sense, written in the stars.
Brother, there's 100 things in there that like to pick and pull from. Basically, yeah, those are the exact questions, Ben, that were asked. They're at least boggling in my mind as a child, because I spent a lot of time in solitude, in my upbringing, basically thinking of the moon of like, God has literally a chapter book that's like opening and having a totality and then closing a book and renewing things. And that being my first sequence, like, well, what is the representation of that? Because it's all witnessed by nature. And to me, that feels empirically real to like see and witness God in its own orchestration, because I believe that the universe wants to be witnessed. And that even just as human beings, as we are kind of the beings that are witnessing this divine experience, maybe all these other gravitational planets or whatever have you have this magnetism that's trying to be pulled and be expressed down on here. Now, as romantic or poetic or amazing or methodical as those kind of ideas could be, what is actually practical and relevant? But what you just said is kind of like, I really view astrology or life is kind of like the old record players, or like the needle is playing on the sequence of life. And whatever gravitational energy is coming through, that you get to be the catalyst of it. So I can say this, one of the biggest studies that disproves astrology is like, well, can't you just predict this person's outcome and it may or may not happen to be true? And this is where I think life gets more interesting, man, is there's a level of fate that I'm believing. Like, as I've been doing this for now 18 years, there's some things that are truly fated. Like, I did look at the COVID 2020 eclipse of 8 planetary eclipses for 4 years to see it actually happen the way it happened. Still will never leave my memory, you know? I don't,
So you predicted COVID through looking at the stars.
So to tell you the truth, I looked at 2020. There's an eclipse on Christmas Day, December 25th, 2019, excuse me. And that initiated a major cycle change that moved over into January 12th. And when I looked at that, it was one of the most aggressive solar eclipses I've seen. It was a 1,200-year sequence that would have represented words I would have used: a plague, a reset of the system, the infrastructure. It's in the sign of Capricorn. The rules are highway systems, banks, government figures, higher CEO authority. The infrastructure, the foundation of your house, is going through a complete metamorphosis, if you will. And so I was looking at that, but you need to know, man, like, astrology is not a universally applicable subject, especially in San Antonio, Texas. So I wasn't screaming it on the rooftop, so to speak, but I do have a podcast with Dylan Suggs that I did mention this, and I was looking at this for 3-4 years, and I was like, 2020 looks like a motherfucking boss level, bro. And I moved. I made actual actions of the embodiment of this, where I moved January 2nd in between those eclipses to Colorado. And you see these, once you get so deep in this work, man, you see the sequences and ebb and flows and like the orchestration that you can really run with the universe and really get into the ebb and flow frequency that is the divine accord, in my opinion. But the fate is only attuned to like these outer planets where you cannot escape that gravity, so to speak. But I want to say this. You can have everything freaking aligned, man. You could be the most blessed, talented, amazing individual and have all that potential fertile energy, but just like any seed in a bag, you know, until you plant it or until you initiate it, are you really going to be able to access that human potential within somebody? So this could disprove, oh, well, I'll just sit here and everything will align for me and my fate will come true. That won't work in your favor either, you know?
We gotta act. We gotta live. We gotta follow the will of the stars, you could say.
Will of life.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it's like astrology, it seems like a portal that can get you into that flow where you're able to let go into where the stars are pulling you. Because we get stuck in these stories, again, like societally, culturally, religious conditioning that's saying, oh, my life should look like this. I should have, 6 figures in the bank. I should have the white picket fence and a wife that loves me. And all these expectations. What if that goes against what the stars are saying, where you're being pulled? And it makes me think of something that maybe you can speak to a little bit more, which is talking about trauma as something that from the astrological lens could be written in the stars for a very valid reason. And I think I saw on the pattern app my house in Chiron or something in Chiron.
Wow, man.
So, and seeing all, and that relating to trauma according to this app, and then seeing how my life was almost destined to be kind of fucked in the beginning. And can you speak to that?
I can absolutely speak. I've done over 500 readings, man. And I will not disclose the person's name. I do a reading, and this is heavy. I did a reading for a woman born in 1986, and she had like what we call, this is astrological nerd flow, like just sequences of music harmonics. And I looked at this and I was like, wow, you had a deeply traumatic, psychologically damaging relationship with father that still haunts you. And you know what she revealed to me? Her father was part of the Russian mafia, man, and took out her whole family. And she was running the country with a certain gun under her pillow because you never knew the day that he was going to come get her.
Holy fuck.
When you have, so think of my experience. I'm just interpreting what I've read in the sequence of the stars, and I'm seeing it like a director in a movie, but I don't know what the actor did.
The specifics.
I don't know the specifics of the situation, but I can feel in the tone. I see the tone in the arithmetic. Now that soul has a very predestined agenda when that trauma comes up. And so I will say a lot of this comes into the alchemization of some of the wisdom of some of the other planets, that there's a purpose for trauma that happens. There's a purpose in arithmetic that goes beyond our equation of comprehension, and it goes into a God equation, basically, on what you will do and what will be transformed through those elements of trauma, which I will tell you is the number one thing of why I do astrology, in a way.
Say that again.
If you want to be mind blown with astrology, go get a sinistry reading of your parents.
A what reading? A
reading that's a sinistry reading is a deep astrological combination. It's a relationship reading. But if you go look at the relationship to your parents in a reading and just see what it kind of pulls out in that, and you tell me what your experience is. And that is one of the most fascinating things, because you've been there all along to see the highs and lows and the intricacies and the little things that take place, the good, bad, and ugly, if you will.
And it reminds me of the Buddhist, well, really just Eastern concept of karma, which can be summed up as causes and conditions, where there's certain causes and conditions from this lens, we would say in the stars, that made your parents who they are. And they had certain trauma, certain wounding. They had certain strengths, openness, closedness to certain things. And that impacted you. But it's so trippy when you see it written in the stars already. And you're like, for me at that point, this moves to a place beyond any kind of blame. Where it's like, where am I pointing the fingers? When I say, like, oh, it's my dad's fault. And this certain psychological paradigm we're living in that is so focused on trauma and mommy daddy wounds. And we point the finger at them. That's a part of, I think, like that sort of sort of like teenage angsty phase of like, the world sucks, my life fucking sucks, and it's all your fault, Dad. And then
Right.
and again, we're pointing the blame at our parents, but then you can also see the how zoomed out the astrological lens is. And at that point, what, should I point my finger at the stars and say, fuck you, God? Like,
right,
bro, good luck with that, man. And it brings me to this notion of what is sort of the depth psychology approach to trauma, depth psychology approach to darkness and pain, which is actually, these are gifts. These are gifts from the angels themselves. This trauma, this house in Chiron, for me, it was a mommy wound. Not just a mommy wound, but it was like a wound, deep wound with the feminine. And actually the masculine too. It's just like all of these people very close to me hurt me at a very young age.
Right.
And I see that I would not be the person that I am today if I was not so fucked, if I was not so wounded and trying to figure out, how do I deal with this? And for me, it just felt normal. You know what I mean? And not until I was in the psychology grad program, I was like, oh, I was pretty fucked. And still kind of am. And it's like, that's what thrust.
Well, who is it?
What?
Who is it? Like, on their own journey of transformation, if you will.
Who is it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful question. And so this is where we go to the Buddhist lens, where they talk about one of the facts of existence is called anatta. That's the Pali word, which is no findable self. There is no real you can come to and say, that's it. Because we have to recognize that any sense of self, any sense of identity is never going to be separate from your mind creating that story. So if I say I'm Ben, or if I say I'm all of creation, or if I say I'm none of it, those are all stories. And they're all going to be empty. So when we recognize that, we come to this real direct experience of the void, where it's like, wait, if I'm not any of these stories, who am I? And you're getting actually intimately acquainted with the voidness of not knowing. And at that point, let's ask that question, like especially deep in meditation, when the mind is very still, who am I? And sit with that, and something profound dawns on you. Right. We start to acclimate to that void, and you start to recognize that as one of your true identities actually is void, unfindable, not you can't delineate yourself. And at that point, whose trauma is this? Whose life is this? Whose myth is being lived right now? And we can make a valid argument to say that this is the angels.
Locked and loaded.
All right, cool. So we just had a slight technical difficulty. Just had to replace the batteries on the mic, and we are back. But that actually is kind of trippy to me, because a lot of the time when we're going to very deep spiritual places, I find that technology starts to fail, which is actually interesting. It's just something I keep noticing. But so what we were riffing on was this notion in Buddhism, which is called anatta, which is no findable self, and recognizing, wait, if I can't find the real me, if I really inquire into who am I, and I don't find an answer, recognizing that, again, we are void, we are empty of true nature, of anything like really real. And at that point, when you're empty of any separate self, you're actually full of everything. Right. The absence of any delineation implies that you are full of all of creation. And at that point, when you ask the question, who am I? There's almost like an incredibly profound, warm emptiness. There's like this beauty that dawns, I'm getting chills, where this place, again, I want to bring in the notion of the Leela in Hinduism, the divine play, where what if this place isn't really real in the way that we think that it is? What if this is a play of images, archetypes, expressions of mind, of the one mind of creation? And at that point, can I let myself get cracked open by my pain and allow that to ripple through my whole being, to move me in certain places? Would I be doing this? Would I be spiritual fuckboy if I was not deeply fucking wounded by the feminine and finding a way to heal that? And again, spiritual fuckboy, like, so a lot of people talk about, this archetype of a fuckboy, which is kind of like dark and kind of cold. But for me, it's like, I like to connect with a lot of people, and I really feel like I can love a lot of people, and finding when I can connect and start to really heal the feminine, that's me healing that wound, actually. And would I be doing that if I wasn't first so fucking like dagger in the heart, just destroyed and like became a shell of a person? So recognizing that is almost my theater, and that is the will of the angels. Let's go. And can I allow that? Or am I going to point to the world and blame the stars? Am I going to blame myself? And like with the whole Buddhist view, what self are we blaming? You're blaming an idea, actually. You're blaming a story.
I can't speak for you, Ben, but I've always thought it to be like a paradoxical thing, because it's like, like, well, it's almost mocking the ego, or mocking those ideologies.
Spiritual fuckboy?
Yeah, sure.
Exactly,
however you want to roll with it,
Yeah.
But we can like mock any kind of egoic stature, like any kind of part of the society likes to put on us,
Yeah.
So obviously you roll with what it is for you, but that's how I viewed it, because we're having some of these super esoteric kind of open conversations about everything, So yeah, just wanted to share on that. But you were chatting about something really raw about like, this empty void of openness. And I find like that's, I feel, when we're tapping into a universal channel.
Yeah.
Where we're like in the primordial force of like what's taking place. And so, not to keep dwelling, but to come into that harmonic of what I see with astrology is like, if you are in your own dharmic kind of like aliveness, or I would just make it simple, following your path of highest excitement, you would start attuning and jiving into the ether of like what it is that you want to align with. Because I was definitely experiencing stuff, man, that were in hyper attunement with what was so to be on the astrology. And then some other people were just having a like, like a flatline experience, but I could see the lack of engagement of who we are as a person. And so there's a paradoxical idea I want to share with you, is because I do feel one of my like trademarks that I kind of think about is you will never happen again.
Yep.
And when I say that, because I feel like God is actually chosen this internal little vessel, call it the one hyper fixed equation of whatever stars you were given, allows us to like be with God through us. It wants to come through us to experience in this kind of divine vessel. So I have like a pantheonist kind of view upon things, that even you and I in this conversation is God communing with itself. Yeah. And then the stars is just kind of that needle of like, what will you create with the potential energy that is offered for you in this time period?
Exactly. And I think you said something or you pointed to something really profound that I've been following, which is the path of really your bliss, your ecstasy, that whole notion of follow your bliss is really deeply true. And you see people that can rise to that occasion and can follow their bliss, and things start to open up. And bliss is different than just sense pleasure. Let's put it like that. If you're just following your pursuit of sense pleasure, which in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just shallow. Like imagine the bliss of living a life in service to that which you love. Shits on sense 100%. Pleasure. Shits on it. And like at that point, like just pick your poison. Are you sure you just want cocaine and strippers, or you want to find a deep eudaimonic? And again, eudaimonic is again seeking deep meaningfulness and purpose, versus the hedonic, which is seeking again just sense pleasure and like positive feeling. And that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with either of them. Right. But just again, like look at the depth we can get from cultivating and again co-creating deep meaning with my life, the people around me, with God itself. God themselves, however you want to, phrase it. It just shits on cocaine and strippers, to be honest. And not to say, hey, baby, we can have it all. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. Like, nothing wrong with cocaine and strippers. I mean, cocaine and strippers are maybe not my cup of tea, to be honest. But at the same time, everyone has their own path. And it's really like up to us to find that. And I think people actually get stuck in this very flat world where when we think mechanical world, well, we're conditioned into a certain story, and that story right now is interwoven with certain beliefs and assumptions about reality. Specifically, the ones that I always point to are materialism, where we say matter is real, the spirit, the imagination is not in the same way. We say scientism, which is different than just science, because scientism is a belief system which says science is objectively real, everything else is not. And that's, again, it's so ubiquitous that it's just the waters we're swimming in. Everyone's like, yes, science is real. Like everything else is just not. And again, this is a belief system. And then reductionism, where we are reducing reality to one story. And when we do that, we're essentially, the way I put it is like you're monocropping the mind. It's like Monsanto for the psyche. And all of a sudden, everyone's the fucking same. And we live in this very flat existence that is a result of holding a certain story where the universe is dead and lifeless, and I'm just this separate ego, and I don't know how we got here. I don't know what's real. And all of a sudden, I guess I just, buy as much cocaine and fuck as many strippers as I can. Bro, it's like, and that's the thing, that whole pursuit, that whole desire eros in that direction is a result of holding certain perspectives and holding them to be true. And what happens when we can actually allow the psyche to organically flow and to create new worlds, to create, and by holding different beliefs, assumptions, and stories, recognizing the waters that we're swimming in are again conditioned by certain narratives, and we can actually just become conscious of them, deconstruct the limiting narratives, and start to reconstruct more beautiful ones. Like, for instance, something you said was, what if it's two faces of God right here having a conversation? What if we're not human? What if we're not only human? What if we can apply a different story, add more depth and dimensionality, and say, these are two angels right here having a conversation? And we can try that on, and it gives me chills. Because from the Buddhist lens of shunyata, which is the crux of the Buddhist tradition, which says there is no really real way that things are that could ever exist beyond your own mind creating it. So when I say that we are angels, that is equally as saying it's just Ricky and Duff, two human beings. Both of those stories are going to be equally valid from the lens of shunyata, from the lens of Buddhism. And the question is, what's the outcome of holding those stories? Right. You know, one leads to enchantment, meaningfulness, richness, again, connection to self, other world, the divine. And one leads to like kind of flatness, like also it's just a cage for the psyche. Can we try on views, stories, and narratives about reality and self and other, like we try on clothes, and change them throughout the day? Like sometimes when I'm at work or when I'm just chilling with the boys, it's just Duff and Ricky, like facts. But do I have the flexibility of mind to be like, at different points, we are angels really talking to each other? And again, can I have that flexibility of mind? And that's where I think the freedom is. Right. And I want to go into something pretty deep right now, actually, which
Let's do it. Yeah.
This notion of an objective reality is actually, if you pay close attention, directly linked to a solidified sense of self. Saying, like, I'm this separate ego called Ben. When we believe that we are this separate ego called Ben, we identify with the ego. That solid ego needs a solid objective world to stand on. If everything is empty, if the whole world is only what you make it, that means this solid ego, by definition, also has to be empty. Because the ego is relative to the world outside of it. So interestingly, the desire to find certainty and some solid ground to stand on is actually directly linked to a solidified ego. And that's where, when I find I'm teaching people about Buddhism, when we start to approach emptiness, and there is either anger, like extreme doubt, like a huge emotional reaction, that's actually a consequence of the ego recognizing that it's heading towards a death experience.
It's feeling caged.
And it's, well, the ego is recognizing, oh, wait, if everything's empty, that means I must be empty. I must be not real in the way I thought it was. And let's not have that. Oh, no. So when we move towards this understanding of shunyata, or emptiness, it's actually innate for the ego, and that's actually not what you are. It's actually what the Buddhists would call a delusion. It's this sense of separation. Right. That ego is going to kick and scream. And that's the thing. When we can enter emptiness and recognize, oh, I didn't need to be really real in the way that I thought I was to have a really good time, to be really deeply free. At that point, the way I put it, it's like the eyes adjust to emptiness. And emptiness is not a great word because it leads to this kind of nihilistic experience of the world for a lot of people.
If not interpreted properly, I understand that someone could take it the wrong way. But I understand. I think when you say emptiness, then I think of void. Exactly. And I think of void in a positive way of just the infiniteness of the night sky and like what could be created in the void.
And I'm glad that you said that because, again, like I say, in the absence of any delineation, when everything is void, it's not empty. It's not empty as in there's nothing there. It's actually pregnant with everything in infinity. So that's the thing. We're talking about these concepts that are hard for the normal mind to grasp, at least at first, which is like, we're talking about this concept that is simultaneously zero and infinity at the same time.
I fully resonate with
both of these concepts, because really zero and infinity are very similar but different. It's everything and nothing simultaneously. And we're talking about these concepts that, again, before like the Arabs, at least in the West, created the concept of zero, you point to something called zero and everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Anytime there's a thing, there's got to be at least one.
Right.
And that's where the human mind actually took a quantum leap in evolution and discovered, oh, zero can be a thing. And that's the thing. We're still adapting to that understanding of, oh, things can be empty. And when we say empty, we also mean infinite and boundless. And that's the thing. There's a negative component to this understanding of the emptiness of really all phenomena, all experience, the whole world itself.
If I can chime with that, man, is like, I think and it plays really strong into music. And I want to share one little astrological tidbit in this one right now, is like, we think of the 3D reality as what is all physical. And I would compare that as the sign of Virgo. It's a 3D reality. What's functionally here, but the opposite sign, Pisces, is the infinite imagination of infiniteness. So when you connect to like, and think about this, in the world of emotions, regardless if it's media, music, poetry, whatever, things that are intangible, that touch the soul, that represent prana or imagination, they move us. They create an inspiration that can change the physical reality and inspire the physical reality to co-create new things. Whoa. So if I like play the piano in a empty void of nothing, I'm just making this up, and everyone's moved in a different way, I could have ripple affected, changed how someone created a business later. Like someone went back and co-created something in the physical reality. So it's bear to witness that like this unconscious tapped water, the imaginational sphere, is how I connect with you in the void of what is pregnant in the feminine void that wants to be initiated. And then the next sign, Aries, is like, well, I took an initiative and I created something new in the void. I penetrated the void in the masculine yin and chose something to be of essence. Regardless of what it is, it's irrelevant to what wants to be created. So viewing it from that lens, it kind of view like almost these particular characters or archetypal energy that people are here to, I love the word you said, like penetrate the impregnated void, you know, and basically see like what Lord wants to create in the field of time, and we get to play a part in that. And that is extensively powerful, but it equally maybe scary for those that are in the mechanical ego of like, there's almost too much to create from this. I could almost be overwhelmed in that energy. If you catch my drift. I
do. And I love that you use the word penetrate the void. And the language that we use when we talk about the cosmos from this very zoomed out lens is innately sexual, because I love what it is, because Mark Gaffney puts it, we are living in a cosmoerotic existence. Everything is presenting Eros, is going towards something. The flowers want you to smell them. They're attracting creatures to them. And like the poetic words that I use is like even the apples blush in the fall, wanting you to take a bite. And it's like everything is in this erotic soup of attracting everything else. And we reject sexuality. And for me, the rejection of sexual expression is deeply, I mean, I don't want to say like satanic or demonic as if it's like a objectively wrong thing. It's just a denial of life. Like period. And that seems like a good way to fuck shit up. Like, do you know what I mean? And so recognizing again, so what does that mean to penetrate the void? The masculine, the feminine, the two primary dualities of this place of experience. There's a part of us that craves to actually enter into that void. And that's what's so scary, because when we enter into an experience of that voidness, it's a death experience for everything that we are, because we have these, again, solidified. The word that I often use is reified, which means to make real, objectively real. It's actually a process. It goes on in your mind. Things aren't objectively real. We reify experience. And so when you're very solid and reified, when you step into that void, it's a death experience. And people hold on for dear life. They turn to drugs, sex, reels, whatever, some way to escape. You know what I mean? Actually having that death experience. But what's so interesting is like, if we want to recreate ourselves, if we want to have an intimate experience with creation, we have to let ourselves die. And that death experience of entering into the who am I? What am I doing with my life? What's going on here? What's real? That is so potent, because that's when you're in the void. And again, the void is not empty. I think yes, it is. Again, it's zero and infinity.
I totally,
And that's, so the negative component of shunyata, emptiness, the void, would be that everything gets kind of erased. Not everything, certain things in your life at certain times.
Well, it almost is meaningless to the point of its creation in a way. And that is also scary and empowering in many ways of looking at it.
And so exactly. So also there's the negative component, and then there's the positive component of emptiness, where it's pregnant with infinity. So when we let ourselves die and get decomposed into the void, literally or metaphorically, we're actually allowing ourselves to get repurposed. We're allowing ourselves to tap into the infinite. Be like, who am I now? Where's my direction? Where's my value? Where's my purpose? And you have access to the infinite when you allow yourself to, again, literally fuck the void. You know what I mean? And then the void is going to fuck you back. And that's again, this cosmoerotic existence. You know what I mean? That we're all a part of. And in every level, obviously there's the physical sense, there's the imaginal sense, the emotional sense of letting ourselves kind of enter into that. And yeah, I think so much of, evil's a strong word, but the darkness in the world is actually linked to a denial of that voidness. Right. It's a denial of our true nature. Or at least one of the faces of our true nature.
If I can chime with you on the kind of the spiritual eroticism thing, the concept that you were sharing is like, life wants it to be created with each other. And, you know, like we don't really want to condemn any kind of animal that's like procreating or co-creating with the earth itself. And so I think everything has its dawn of like being ripe and fertile, and then it dies and decays to co-create again, as has been the law of time here on planet Earth.
As above, so below.
I think there's a level, though, when we bring in the sacred quality of it that allows it to be co-created in a very fruitful way. And I feel like it's only kind of, it could be other animals potentially, but I feel like humans, we have this fine line of just understanding what is a sacred way of just like fueling the soul that wants to be created, that I think has an infinite source of having that energy. And then where it is becoming a pseudo egoic kind of, it's just back to what you were saying a while ago, like it's compensating for an ego kind of, it's trying to cope with the fact that there's a mechanical notion to life. And so that's where I think pleasure outweighs a level of like greed, if you will, that isn't actually in a life cycle dharmic sense. Doesn't mean it can't be powerful and alive, to be honest. Greed? Well, just like, you know, when people are materialistic, and I'm using materialism in kind of this level of having this vilified sexual nature, basically, to put it, because like, you know, there is a level of sacredness, and there are some things that are deemed like, you know, that we know as humans are quantifiably evil or like negative or however so, because, you know, in the sexual essence is really sacred and internal and like private and connected, but that's why I think it's the most powerful in a way.
So I would really want to stay on this subject because I think it's so potent, and it's a question that I have, which is this notion of sex being sacred. Like, what does that mean, and what is actually our image around what that looks like? Do you know what I mean? Is that image objectively the way that it is? How can we? It's
a good question.
Do you know what I mean? So how much of our image of sacred sexuality is actually coming from conditioning? You could make the argument that absolutely all of it has to be, actually. There's no way we could separate ourselves from that. But is there also something deeply true about, again, that more reserved flavor of sexuality, that more keeping it to yourself, or like in like Christianity, keeping it for one person forever, for your whole life, right? And the beauty of that. And I'm about to have some people on the podcast that are really Christian, and I'm really excited to interview them. And it's not a point of conflict for me, because like, you know, I'm at this point in my life where I'm exploring like polyamorous dynamics, and it was never anything I really wanted to get into explicitly. It just kind of happened, where I was like, oh wait, I find like I can actually really love multiple people at once. And do I love them? I like thought about it quite a bit, and I was like, yeah,
there's so much debate here in this, because I've been in a polyamorous relationship, and it's something that it doesn't work for me, but it's the flavor of love or the flavor of connection that one is seeking. And I have enough experience with this and witnessing this to just share my 2 cents on it, basically. But I think the honor of true transformation, I believe, comes from a monogamous relationship, because it's a constant mirror, and there's no element of like cop out depending on the depth that you want to receive with an individual. Yet though, there's so much in the experimentation and understanding oneself that if you're free and it's a season, that makes sense for someone to like understand like, hey, I still love you, and this is where I can meet you at. There's a freedom there that is it's your right to have that autonomy as a human being. I just, my personal opinion depends on like the flavor of love, or the flavor that one's trying to go into it. And to come back into like the sacred sexuality, this could be like a hot, heavy topic basically. But, you know, I will say this, in the defense of women that have been unfortunately like raped or defiled, why does that feel negative? Or why? Because they feel like their own purity or in sacredness feels as if not taken without consent or something. And that is just the energy that guides me to understand, well, what can we love in this field? Because there's an element of our own innocence that does come through our own sexuality too, as much as on the spectrum of like super powerful sexual magnetism, and then like this innocent private internal soft world, like on that spectrum. Where is the field of sexuality basically? And I think, and it's just a field to honor both of those elements, because I will totally agree with you. When your sex drive's alive and well, you feel like a tumultuous, like you feel like a god. You feel like you can almost attract anything or money, or like the sacral alive is a powerful energy.
Totally.
No doubt.
It is. And that's the thing. That's where like the tantric kind of techniques as far as like semen retention are, let's just say it's a lot of power to carry, and power, comes with responsibility. Because you become quite literally magnetic. And I don't say that lightly. I say that having experience with that. Yeah, exactly. And but it's I want to stay with like the pros and cons of polyamory and monogamy, and recognizing spirit is living through all of us, and it's acting flawlessly by definition. Actually, how could anything that's going on be wrong? Because you can see it's the way it's supposed to be, because it's happening. Like at one level we really can't question that. And so what do the spirits want through me? What is the story right now in my life? And for me, being very wounded with the feminine in many ways, especially actually recently, which is what I sort of just talked about with one of my exes, like let's just say like 3 or 4 years ago. I don't want to get into another deeply open monogamous dynamic, because to be honest, I'm afraid of getting handicapped by a broken heart, because it fucking destroyed me for years. I'm like, honestly, I don't see anything wrong with that. You know what I mean?
Transparency is commendable.
Oh, thank you, bro. I think vulnerability is strength. That's a big part of what I want to bring people. So again, my heart got so wounded where I'm like, do I want that? Like I function pretty highly. Like there's benefits to the polyamory in that I can keep being open to new connection, but it keeps me from actually having to sink to those very deep vulnerable places in myself, as far as, do I really trust this person? Can I open my heart to them? And right now in my life, I cannot do it. I mean, maybe I can, like there's a way, but it's like the amount of work that would have to happen for me to do that. I just legitimately don't, my energy and my focus is in other places. And that's the thing. I think there's something really sacred about the fuckboy archetype. And I say that it's sort of tongue in cheek, but it's also sort of true, where there's like, just like the sacred prostitute, the sacred whore, we forget about these things. These are another face of God. So what's wrong with it? Who are they? Is there objectively something wrong with it? Or do we make something wrong with it?
I think it's all in the choice of the flavor of God you're wanting to experience, in my perspective, because I don't have this ambiguous or dogmatic form of God, in my opinion. What realm do you want to ascend into or not play into? You can pick your instrument to play in, if you will. And I don't have any judgment upon that necessarily, in just the relevance of like where one feels value. And you use one other little astrology thing, you're Taurus and your opposite sign Scorpio. And this is like the roots of the tree that we pull from this deep, intimate world, and that we can like, I trust you in the darkness. Like I trust you in this warlike world, and when we come up in the spring is where Taurus, like we actually enjoy these fruits of like the benevolence, the stability and fertility, of Venusian quality, to be like in the supple you say tantric flow of like what is actually beautiful, the earth spoils, so to speak, the dessert. But within that, you want to understand like what these accesses can bring in full heartedness, in my opinion, because and I commend you. I think everyone should be more on the court on like what it is that they're actually, where they're at, because I've had my own wounds with the feminine, of course, too, and where it calls me to act in different responses. I'll definitely name that, it's my monogamous one-on-one relationships that bring up the most mirrors. but they also have catalyzed me to be the most that I've found in myself. I've found myself in this volcanic alchemization over and over again. Yeah. And the one thing I'll say into the void, man, maybe it makes me a masochist or something like that, but like the integration to be in the masculine and love the feminine and to be purified and die in that over and over again is sometimes we need to be careful with our physical body, but there's a level of that. It's like, well, what would Jesus do? What would God do? What would the infinite do? What would be me at my full totality want? And I have no judgment because I think everyone is finding that own path. Yep. Another hyper lens that I look at, and I can't help but view everything in this like X-ray goggle thing, is like I look at people's astrological composition, like, what pertains to them. Someone's got more like Leo or Scorpio energy just for fun. They're really intense with the relationships, and they need to feel love at the core. They need to feel like passionate love making, trust, loyal. Like they need that, but there's more versatility because there's parts of life that like we don't want to make the wrong decision or get shackled into an energy that is not fully permeating the other essences of what I have. Like, there's so much variety that refreshes my own state of being and why I get tied in with not being fully open in the void, and so there's so many like flavors of understanding this, and so like I think it just comes down to the stage of life, man. Like
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so we have about 5 minutes left, and the thing is we're gonna have to do another podcast because this is already such a fucking banger in my opinion. We're gonna have to do more.
There's a lot I wanted to hit.
We just scratched the surface with spirituality. We haven't even talked about music. We haven't even talked about Ember Ice, but we will. Yeah. But just for me, I just want to lay out what my understanding of the pros and cons of monogamy versus polyamory are. So let's start with monogamy. Again, the mirrors are intense. The element of sacrifice and surrender into another person and the depth of trust that comes with that.
Totally.
Like when you can really trust someone to hold you and they do, and you meet that mirror and you're able to do the same for them, bro. Like that is crack. You know what I mean? It feels so good to the whole being. And that's where, but then if it doesn't work out and you had that depth, bro, it hurts like fucking hell. And you're sacrificing a lot. Like, let's say if you're in a committed relationship for 5 years in your 20s, let's just say you'll never get your 20s back. You know what I mean? You won't. Sure. So that's a big commitment. And are you like, that's the thing. Love is so beautiful in that sense. It's like such a practice in trust and surrender. And so for me, I feel like I'm just walking again through this theater. Well, I've been deeply wounded. So it's like, bro, I just don't trust in that depth. I do in some ways, but it's difficult for me. So that's like, some pros and cons to monogamy. And again, like what comes up as you get to those deeper levels of trust and actually deeper levels of surrender. Are you sure you're cool with this? And for me, that's where I pull back. It's like, if you want to use a avoidant attachment style lens, then you could, because that's valid. But then polyamory, let's just say you're open to all these different flavors. It's more like you're skimming the surface, you're sampling. I just get the image just right now of I'm in an apple orchard and I'm tasting some Pink Lady apples, I'm tasting some Macintosh, some like Granny Smith, but I'm just taking a bite. And then I'm just, throwing it away. Right. And maybe more monogamy is like, yo, I'm going to take these apples and I'm going to bake a pie.
If you got time for this one, just maybe we got 2 minutes in this or something. Yeah. But like, this is what really got me into dancing, man.
Say more.
This is really what got me into dancing because I'm a big proponent of the ether. And this is in my astrology, man. How many creative arts can I have a facet of using my masculinity? And dancing is one of those because you immediately, and I like the partner dancing. I know people do a static dance out here and that's chill. But when you're in the feminine, I'm immediately locked into a feminine's energy. And like, oh, wow, this one's really firm and rigid. I might need to loosen them up a little bit. Oh, wow, this one's way fluid. I actually need to be more of a rock and more stern in my own masculinity. I'm attuning to what is a flavor of connection in a 5-minute song. Bro. And this is my opinion and my philosophy of how passionate I am about this because I still get to have, and it's just a song. And whatever happens, it is what it is. It's a mini relationship.
Fast. Dude, I love that. It's such a bummer that we got to end on a cliffhanger like that. We have how long? 7 minutes. We have 7 minutes. Okay, cool. I would love to hear more about. So, what style of dance do you do?
So for and I'm a novice here. I'm still a beginner of sorts in this, but like I've recently done 2 years of bachata dancing, about a year of salsa. I'm about 11 months into this, but it was the philosophy of understanding how to dance and lead as a masculine lead.
Totally.
That's a skill. That's a skill. And if women that go out and go dance at either Avalon or anywhere, you know, we're in the Boulder area, but you'll find that you're understanding like how to really connect with those energies at hand. And you're going to refine your own energy at hand because everyone's got a different style. I have a different style. Right. I have a different flavor.
Different energy.
And who's actually going to work with me or not. And it's so fascinating, bro, to go and dance with someone that relatively is like a beautiful person and you have enough skills and chops in the belt, you know, and it just doesn't hit. You know, and you have to just bow out, and it's sometimes it's just the edge of crafting, chiseling yourself through this process, and that you'll really be able to find like. But there's a partner or two I'll never forget, like, and there's just something, and you call it the astrology, you call it something's in the chemistry that stuff comes out of me I did not see coming, and you're left elated in those sequences. So. Dude. So that is something that, and you know, pick your sauce, pick your flavor, but that's something I would kind of align with in polyamory in a way, because you're understanding there's not a lot of commitment here. It's just commitment to enjoy the dance for 5 or so plus minutes. And I'm using this analogy so someone understands, well, that puts the fucking burner of like, if you're starting out in your masculinity, like, dude, I have to accept I suck right now. Like, you have to accept where you're at. But actually that acceptance is the refining fire, bro, that I've found. And when I know someone that's got a little extra more skills, you are more embodying of your own initial dharma. In the void is what actually something you are actually finding yourself in that. So, and then the feminine energies that seem to align really stroke a chord, you know, or really awaken some energy within you. And so I don't think it's a bad thing. I used to be hyper monogamous, bro. Like I was like loyal to the T, and I still am to most of my energy. But to understand in the moments that spirit has plot me to transform and understand other elements of myself, it's a perpetual evolution, you know? And so, there's so much to say on this.
I am so glad that you said this. Your understanding of dance energetically, bro, we could riff for a whole nother podcast on it.
I'm here. I'll get an hour.
I know, bro. Like, that's the thing. And already I'm thinking, like, if we just take dance as a microcosm, you said it perfectly. Like, there's a place for, again, what you could call the polyamorous style of dancing. You know, I'm seeing many partners, but when you find that person that is just, you know, it clicks at a level just beyond anything you've ever seen, obviously. I mean, bro, commit to that. Duh. It's just the best way to do it. So it's like you find there's a value in both of those styles, right? And recognizing all of that. And like you said, being able to use that as a microcosm of how do you connect with people. And the podcast I just did with Howard Snooks, we talked about this concept of rejection for the masculine, or just really people in general, and the fear of that. And when you're dancing with somebody and it just doesn't sync, the chemistry's not there, bro, it's not rejection. It's the chemistry's not there. You know what I mean? And there's hella people in here I'm sure you're going to connect with and dance great with, you know? And that's the thing. Can we move away from that like really contractive, really isolating flavor of rejection in intimate relationship, as well as just like dancing, and be okay with that? And like, and also be okay with sucking. Like we were talking about like spit and game in the last podcast, and like how scary that is, but also how necessary that is to get into that like fear and that discomfort and that possible rejection. And with dance, it's the same way. Like, bro, especially, I'm going to have to come to one of these dances with you. I have to.
I've talked it up.
I know, dude. And I'm going to be absolute trash, bro.
That my invitation, though, is getting on the court of that, man. And like, to be honest, I have a couple friends. I won't name drop them, although I want to do some shout outs. But, you know, you're gaining so much more confidence in that moment, of allowing yourself to craft through that, you know? And so, so to bring it up is basically like, you get a lesson and I would stay. And even if you make a mistake, the feminine is sharpening you, bro. The feminine is sharpening that sword. No way you want to look at it. And so when you're feeling into that energy, I think that at the end of the day, I'm better than I was before I got in here. And that allows you to really kind of earn this notion of crafting your own energy. And then when you see, and so let's make it up. And this is cool, at least with astrology, and I'll be quick on this. When you have that kind of chemistry, that is pregnant within each individual, and you're going to find different sequences of how you connect. So this is my way of like finding, well, now I'm like locking in and understand the sequence of energy to what I like, what I don't like, what crafts me, what doesn't craft me.
You know yourself better.
But I'm also, the higher I go, the more I can access that point. You know, because you could have two people completely compatible, but if I haven't done enough work to lead, you can't access it yet.
And bro, we got to wrap this up. We need to have another podcast because this is fucking heat.
Yeah,
bro,
yeah.
You're the fucking man. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to shout out your socials, your business, anything cool you got going on?
I'll say much love to people back home. You can like my channel, Ricardo Zeevaert, on my Instagram. I'm redoing my website. We'll probably leave that in a link for the full description. Please check out Ember Ice if you're in the Boulder region. We'd love to have you come over, get a free session or such.
Facts.
And, we're looking at 2026. Love having Ben and a lot of other close friends. Come out, get your health game on.
Yeah.
Much love. Yeah.
Sauna, cold plunge, get your shit on lock, become an alpha in every dimension, and come chill with dope people at Ember Ice. So, Ricky, again,
Facts.
I love you, bro. This was sick. Thank you so much for coming on.
Cheers, bro.